Alrighty, now whip this out of here. Now for the leg. The leg is a fatter piece of wood, but it doesn't matter because this dowel jig will allow me to drill right into the center, find the right space, make sure that this is going to line up correctly on this side. Okay, double check. Now, once again, make sure that the dowel jig is flush here at the top. Okay, great. Now, once I've got all my joints doweled, I'm ready to assemble. And the way I'll approach that is I will put glue down the holes, glue on the dowels, hammer them in gently with a mallet till they're about halfway in. And then I'll be ready, and I'll put glue on the other side of the joint and gently mallet them in, and also with some assistance with some clamps.
Okay, we're set to drill our holes through the stock to get our base assembled with the using the horizontal drilling feature of the Mark V, and it's really handy, as you'll see, and it's also very easy to use. The first thing we're going to do, you can see we have great adjustment here for our height. We've got our leg marked out very carefully, having checked our plans. We know right where it should be. And I line up the point on the brad point bit right with my mark, and I lock off right down here. The next thing we need to set up is the depth of our cut here, and the Mark V really makes that easy. Let me show you how it works. We've got our fence set up here as a depth stop, and we look at our mark, and I'm going to bring the point of the brad point drill right into the wood, and I'm going to lock the quill down here for just a second, just like that. Now, I'm going to come over here and set the depth I want, which in this case is 7/8 of an inch. That's what the plans call for. Spin that setting down tight, and now I know I'm going to have the 7/8 I want. Unlock the quill, and just take a little check here. Look at how that goes. Isn't that nice? Then it's going to stop right at the depth, so every hole will be exactly the right depth. Now, any power tool, you got to be careful, so I'm going to be very cautious about where my hands are, but I'm ready to go. I'm ready to drill these holes. Cut the machine on. Look at how easy that is. Hole number 1. Just move it down a little bit to the next mark. Hole number 2, shut the machine off. And, okay, let's see if all that bragging is going to prove me right. I've already drilled the rail. By golly, that looks like a pretty good fit to me. That's definitely a keeper. We've got all the drilling done. Let's go and put this together. Okay, that's got it for the finished sanding. I think we're ready to put this together, Avian.
Looks good. Now what we're going to do is insert our dowels, glue everything up, and then tighten everything together with clamps. And when we let that dry, let's go down and cut that tabletop to size, okay?
Good. Okay, there's our last clamp. Let's see how we did.
Why don't we check the diagonals for squareness?
Good idea. I'll measure this from opposite corners. And there we've got 28 inches. Measure the other opposite corners. If they're the same, we're square, and it is, both 28 inches.
Great. Okay. Now let's go cut our tabletop.
Right.
All right. You've let your tabletop set up for at least 24 hours, so it's nice and dry. Now we want to show you how to cut it down to the right dimensions. First of all, check your plans. Our plans call for the tabletop to be 18 inches wide by 24 inches long. And we already ripped down one edge, so I've got the tabletop set to exactly 18 inches. And one thing I want to note right here is when you're ripping or cutting, you want to try and cut away any blemishes or rough spots. And we've got a bad one right here, so we're going to slice that right off.
If you have a piece that's large and clumsy like this one, it's a good idea to have somebody on this side of the table to help take it off for you.
Now once we've finished doing the rip, then we'll go to the cross cut. You ready?
Ready. Ready.
We're set up for the cross cut now, and I'm using the miter gauge, and you notice that I added this extension since this board is fairly long. And now once we finish doing the cross cuts, Les is going to show you how to sand the surface of the tabletop and route our edges.
Okay, that looks pretty good for our rough sanding. We do that with a belt sander, get all the marks, final little marks off from the glue and what have you. Then we're ready to put our fancy edge on here. Now we've got a choice of a number of different styles we can use. You can see here 3 different ones. We're going to use even a 4th one for our use. We're going to do this with a router, but this can be done on the shaper or the multi-purpose tool. So the choice we've got here is this chamfer bit, as you can see. It's going to make a beautiful little edge. The router makes a bit of noise, so I'm going to put these ear protection on. And we're about ready to go. Something to remember when you're doing this with a router is you start with your end grain first. We're going to get a little tear out here just at the corner, and we'll remove that tear out when we come back and do the long grain. When we start our router, we want to make sure the cutter is not touching the stock. We've got it off here a little bit, and we're going to start almost at the end, but not quite. We'll go back and clean that up later. Here we go. We're ready to go.
The edges of our tabletop have been routed. Everything is sanded. The joints are nice and tight. So now we're ready to attach our base to the tabletop. I wanted to make sure that the base is going to be centered on the tabletop. So we've made lines all along the inside, and we can line everything up along those lines. And as I showed you earlier, we're using the mirror clips, 2 on these ends and 3 along the sides. I pre-drilled the holes right along here, so now we're just ready to attach those. Stick the screw in, put on my safety glasses. And we're using this cordless drill with a Phillips head drill bit, so this is going to go in real fast.
There are as many different finishes as there are people that put them on. Avian and I are going to talk about a couple of them.
Well, there are a lot of different things to consider when you're choosing a finish. The most obvious one is appearance. Do you want to maintain the natural wood look, or do you want to make it a little bit darker? Now, see, I ran this test.
What did you put on there?
I put some linseed oil right here, and that gives the natural wood look, and then I put a stain to make it a little darker right here.
I like this much better.
Actually, I do too, so we agree on something.
Good.
Now, the other thing to look at is what kind of durability or protection do you need? If your furniture is going to be exposed to moisture, or you might be placing drinks that would make water stains or spots, you probably want some protection, and we decided to use polyurethane, which is highly protective.
Not only is it highly protective, it's completely waterproof, scratch-proof, and it's very easy to use, and that's a big consideration, because you don't want to spend the rest of your life finishing this table. First, though, before we start with that, we're going to use this tack rag, which is just a piece of gauze that's been impregnated with some wax, and it'll pick up all the sawdust left over from our sanding, and it'll also pick up any dust that accumulated here in the shop while we were waiting to do this.
Well, that's a roaring fire. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it feels good tonight. We had a wonderful time showing you how to build this little table, and it fits right into this room.
You know, in mastering these basic woodworking skills, you can apply them to all different kinds of woodworking projects and build for the quality you want.
Not only that, every time you see your table, you're going to have the satisfaction of knowing you did it yourself.
I'm Avian Rogers.
And I'm Les Sizik. Thanks for joining us today.